I'm Minister Emma Venn of Universal Law Community Trust, and I've been asked to make this speech to counter all of those so-called prolific speakers that are getting you to congregate in places like London and elsewhere in the world to listen to them banging on about the problem that we're all aware of. Not one of them has got the ability to be able to disclose this information to you due to their compromised position, which has them there on this stage, and which is why my message is coming to you in this form. There is something called universal law, and it supersedes every single man-made definition of administrative code, acts, statutes, and legal systems. Adding to the law, which is to do no harm, is called administrative law. It is administrative code, it is not law, and it requires an act of fraud on your part in order for it to initiate. How does that happen? You think that that legal name that you've been using all your life is yours. It is not. It is a private corporation, a copyrighted logo belonging to Crown Corporation and all other incorporated states belonging to the Vatican. When you use that legal fiction that you think is yours, you are assigning all of your shares of the planet and its resources into a private corporation and giving up your rights to then buy them back as a privilege. Now, as you look around you, you will see that all of those police officers standing around you there are not there as your common law constables, for example. They're not there to uphold the law. They're actually there to protect the so-called assets belonging to these private corporations, namely you. By you using that legal fiction, you are agreeing and consenting to become a thing, chattel, dead, lost at sea, under the Sesquitovi Act of 1666, where if you haven't been evidenced as being alive for the first 7 years or subsequent 7 years of your life, you are presumed to be dead, lost at sea. And every time you use that name, you are actually consenting to be a corporation. Corporation is corpse orating, a dead thing speaking. And what you're doing is you're giving away your rights to buy them back at a later date as a privilege. So for goodness sake, stop running around shouting, "I want my human rights." Nobody can remove your rights from you. You are granting them away by consenting to put them all behind a legal fiction that does not belong to you. So after watching all of those people standing on that stage in the last few weeks and speaking to you all about the problem, not one of them has offered you a valid solution. Universal Law Community Trust has been granting this solution free of charge to anybody who wishes to exercise their universal rights and become unalienable. A charge, a lien, cannot be attached to you. There is no need for any mask. You are Minister Emma Venn. You are ministering your energy and matter in movement. And what you're doing is you're granting away your universal rights to a private corporation to do whatever it is that they like in your name. You are crediting a system of terrorism, and you are consenting to be subject to acts and statutes which are only applicable to dead things. Now, the solution to this is first very simply stop doing that. You put your name under non-disclosure because you are not given a license to use it. Have any of you got a license to use a legal fiction that isn't yours? If you were to open a shop today and call it Nike or Adidas or McDonald's, would you not be guilty of copyright theft and intellectual property infringement? It's as simple as that, people. And it's time that you opened not just your eyes, because you can all see what's going on here, but your mind. and start to minister yourself accordingly. Now here we have a very prolific solution, and it's very simple. You need to know the law. There is no ignorance under the law. Those police officers that are standing around you are actually there, ready to coerce you to commit an act of fraud. The fraud is the minute that they ask you, what is your name? They are guilty of trying to coerce you to grant all of your rights away and to consent to be subject to their acts and statutes. Now, because an act of fraud is required in order for their legal system to initiate, there is no legal remedy to be had from anything that has its origins based in such a fraud. Adding to the ministration of the law is unlawful. So all administrative codes, ecclesiastical law, canon law, trade law, mercantile law, all of those things, all the way down through common law, all the way down to contract law, you are actually breaking the divine, what they would call the divine contract that you have with the Creator. Universal law is an unwritten law. It exists in every single one of your cells. It resonates in harmony with the rest of the cells, that it coexists in this experience of so-called reality together. And that is what we stand in and are made from. At no point is there any suggestion that you are obliged to contract with a system that would then use your planet and its your share of its resources to commit terrorist attacks in your name, called medicine, chemical warfare. We've got the Biomedical Institute sitting in Cambridge, that if it was in Afghanistan or Iraq, it would have already been nuked by now because of the disgusting terrorist practices that have been continuated there. This company, AstraZeneca, is the parent company of the company that brought you DDT, that was responsible single-handedly for contaminating and polluting our food chain supply by dumping millions and millions of litres of this stuff into the sea. And you are standing around waiting for somebody else to come along and rescue you. It is you. You are responsible for all that you see. You are responsible that this private corporation, once known as HM Government, that has now been secured by Universal Law Community Trust, using universal law and its standing and associating itself with being able to secure all of the collateral that was once claimed by this private corporation, namely you, and put it back into the hands of the people. Now you are obliged under the law to prevent a crime from being enacted. So take a look around you. Pinpoint one of these individuals who's wearing a magic uniform that think that they can force their commercial code upon you and arrest them. They are impersonating police officers. That's 7 years in prison. But if the law is not being upheld in your community, it's only yourselves that you have to blame. You are sucking up this spewed out media bullshit that says that you have got some corporation who has an authority over you, when that authority is yours, and you either grant it away or you reserve your rights. You have got a right to contract. You have a right, therefore, to not contract. Do you really want to continue contracting with a private corporation who has taken your trust and turned it into a private corporation, seizing your assets, collateral, children, the rights of use of your property, and under the name of a so-called debt equity swap, using something called Uniform Commercial Code and its equivalent to do so. So if you're going to go along with the presumption and assumption that somebody can come along and steal your right of use of your house for a debt that was secured on it, then you need to know that it can be done back to them. We created Universal Law Community Trust so that you could reserve your rights inside there, while you then stand up in your community and say, not in my name. You will not do this in our name. You will not use our shares of this planet and its resources to fund our terrorism by excavating aluminium from the biggest aluminium mine in Europe and spraying it in the sky and having us believe that it's clouds. You will not take our share of this petrochemical system and use it to create chemical warfare in the name of medicine and unleash it upon the people of our community. And anybody who does do that, you can rest assured that you will be arrested. Our ministers are amongst you in your community. All you have to do is reach out. You are obliged under the law to prevent a crime from being enacted. There is one law, and there is the rule of law. No matter what it is that anyone who may wish to involve themselves in this matter, you need to stick to what you know, which is that we never forget nor seek to obstruct the first truth of law, that there is and was and there has only ever been one law. All law is equal and no man is above it. All law is measured that all may learn and know it. All law is standard that it may always be applied the same. All law is a rule that prohibits or permits certain acts. A rule is a norm, bar, maxim, measure or standard, so don't get the two mixed up. A rule may be derived by instruction, discovery, custom or consent. The highest law is universal law, attempted to be determined by the system as divine, being a rule given by divine instruction. As no thing may contradict such a rule, this is because it is unwritten and is seen all around us as the resonance of creation coexisting in harmony upon an unwritten force that does no harm upon itself. The highest second law be the reason of mind, being an edict given by a great council of wise elders, ministers of universal law, as nothing absurd and without good cause can be considered to be law. The third highest law is the law of the people, as the consent and will of the people is the source of true authority. So by getting everyone to assign their consent to the Vatican by using the legal fiction, here we are usurping ourselves by administrative code, which is not law. The weakest rule is that of a tyrant, as any rule without authority or right of heaven, but merely by force, cannot be sustained, and the people shall eventually overcome. This is where you are right now, standing in this part, and render such unjust rule and unjust laws as dust. This be the law of all great civilizations from the beginning of time, and no king or assembly or city has sustained in ignorance of such foundation. Then these be the foundations of rule of law. All law be spoken, for it is the spirit of the word that carries the authority. Therefore all action under law be by word of mouth, and writing be only for memory and trade, and never be the law. All are equal under the law. All are accountable and answerable under the law. All are without blemish until proven culpable. Therefore, assumption and presumption is out of the window and unlawful. Where there is law, there must be a cause. Where there is law, there must be penalty. Where there is law, there must be a remedy. An action in law cannot proceed first without cause. An action is not granted to one who is not injured. The action of a valid law can do no harm, cause injury. An action decided in law must reflect cause of such action. No injury to the law means no valid cause for action by law. No action through law can arise from a fraud before heaven and earth, So your legal systems are out of the window because it requires an act of fraud by you using a legal fiction that doesn't belong to you, laying a false claim to a copyrighted logo belonging to the Crown Corporation in this instance. For no one is punished. An act does not make one culpable unless there be an intent to do wrong. No action through law can arise in bad faith or prejudice. For no one is punished for the transgression of an ancestor or another, so inheriting another person's debt on their deathbed is unlawful. No one can derive an advantage in law from his own wrong. For what is invalid from the beginning does not become valid over time. No one is accused of the same exact cause twice. No man be the judge of his own matter, so reporting these people to the police chief commissioners to have them investigate themselves is not valid as a form of remedy. Nothing that comes from an origin of fraud can give you remedy. Therefore, don't go and look for a legal remedy in a system void of any method of remedy due to the fact that its origins stand in fraud. No man can be the judge of his own matter, nor a man possess the authority of heaven to be both judge and executioner in the same matter. No penalty may exist without a valid law. The immediate cause and not the remote cause be the subject of the law. These be the foundations of rule of law. Now imagine a community that stood on that. Imagine a community that was happy to uphold such a definition and such an obligation. And you have that around you. But while you're running to the system, as you are today, protesting in a square, you are actually protesting against yourselves. You are protesting against your own unconsciously incompetent state of mind. And it is down to you as to when you will sever that contract that you keep making, causing a fraud upon your soul. Now the solution to this is very simple. We have a website called universallawcommunitytrust.com. You go on there, go to the home page, add in the legal fiction that you've been crediting all this time and assign your consent back to yourself. Universal law is not something separate of you. It exists in you and you are assigning your consent back to rebut the presumption that because you never bothered to take care and create your own version of this trust structure in order for you to reserve your rights behind, you've been presumed to be needing a governing of your mente, a government. That's where the word comes from. Do you really need the bunch of clowns like you see today representing you and your state of mind?